Are you tired of sifting through endless health advice that promises quick fixes but delivers nothing but frustration? Welcome to the Anti-Macro Podcast, the go-to place for scientifically backed yet digestible health and fitness wisdom without the fads or gimmicks. Whether you're looking to ditch chronic dieting, optimize your hormone and gut health, or simply find balance in your wellness journey, you're in the right place. I'm Coach Diana Lee, your no-nonsense guide to transforming your health and mindset for the better. Each episode, I'll dive into topics ranging from nutrition basics to debunking common myths to cutting-edge functional health insights, sometimes featuring guest experts in the space. Get ready to learn, grow, and take actionable steps toward a healthier and happier you. So grab your favorite beverage, kick back, and let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast, Alysa. I always like to start my first question with having you introduce yourself to my audience. Tell them a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what you stand for.
All right. Hi, everyone. I am Alysa Reyes. I own an online coaching company focusing more on functional health. It's me and my wife and our two cattle dogs that you'll see all over our Instagrams as well. That is our life. Our biggest focus is helping people rebuild their health. You know, why they see themselves a certain way, how they move through the world. We want them to show up in the most authentic version of themselves and really focusing on strength, nourishment, and freedom along the way.
Ooh, that was very succinct. I like that. And also to put two and two together, your lovely wife was also just on the podcast talking with us about somatics not too long ago. So
oh yeah, it's been a whirlwind in our house with all the somatic talk lately and getting into the deeps of it all.
Yeah, and I always like to joke that you guys are now my woo friends.
We are woo. We say we're woo and science meet, and then you see our little faces there.
Yes, which I love it. I love it because I think there's so much validity behind that. But Joelle had her story. You have a different story. You have your own experiences that brought you to this point. So tell us a little bit more about how you got into functional health and how your personal story drove you in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a 3-sport athlete throughout high school and college, and I crashed my system. I had found out that I have what they call those REDs, relative energy deficiency. They call it in sport. Sometimes people hear it syndrome. But more or less, I was outworking what my body could actually do because I was not giving it enough nutrients and rest to sustain everything I was asking for it. So it shut down my system in many ways. And it took me probably up until... This was college. This was 2011, 12, around that time when I graduated. It took me until about 2 years ago to really get a handle more on where I am now. There's a lot of information between, which I know we're going to dive into as you ask some more questions around it. But yeah. Yeah.
So let's get into that a little bit more because there are definitely listeners here who are former athletes, who are no stranger to hard work. And they're no stranger to, let's call it, eating clean or trying to watch what they eat. And a lot of times these women think that they're doing all of the right things, but then it's actually turning against their body. So let's make sense of that through your story. What exactly happened with, how did you crash your body?
So I thought that I needed to have more control over my eating. And where that comes from, I'm still unpacking because we know any type of disorderly eating is another way of controlling some other thing that happened way beyond. But a lot of it came forward to me thinking I need to be more disciplined. I needed to be more focused. I needed to be more strict. But what I didn't realize is I was getting my information from the bodybuilding community because I was surrounded by more bodybuilding coaches and my dad was a bodybuilder when he was younger, my godfather. So I grew up more around that. And then I was more drawn to that even when I was playing sports. Always loved other athletes and what they did, but I never reached out to someone who knew on how to fuel athletes for performance. Because I was also in my head, here I am, a female, high school, college, that body composition type of focused, but not understanding hey, you can't be super, super lean, playing over 10 hours in 6 games a week and think that everything's going to match up. So it really started to unpack a lot of things that I didn't even realize until actually after I finished with sports.
That's the hard part, right? Because a lot of people think bodybuilding is synonymous with health and kind of like peak health and wellness. Yeah, we're shaking our heads. But obviously, like there's bodybuilding is a sport in itself. And
Right.
that's what people have to understand is like this is not how people are supposed to live year round. This is not how people are supposed to look year round, and it doesn't translate over to how we actually support our bodies from a healthy perspective.
Yeah, and I'll say like having a serving of sweet potatoes at lunch and dinner is not gonna cut it for someone who's practicing as hard as and intense I was, and that led to me having also eating issues and leading into binge eating, which I never was able to put the pieces together because my body was screaming for nutrients, and here I am restricting it so hard, and then after dinner binging on anything I could get around because I was not even starving. I was disconnected from myself and not knowing what I was actually feeling.
So in college, you were doing athletics. Post college, were you still doing athletics, or is this when you got more into, let's say, traditional fitness, and then you were also combining it with, like, let's call it bodybuilding style eating, or what exactly were you doing?
So a lot of my issues started in college. That's when my cycle went away and I went to the doctors and they were like, "You're not trying to conceive. I wouldn't worry about it. You're an athlete. You're pretty lean. You're very active. So your cycle, like, I wouldn't stress about it." And at that point I was like, cool. Makes it easier not having a cycle because Lord knows with game timing and everything, like no one wants to deal with it. But not knowing, like, hey, that is a major thing for your health. Now I sit back and I'm like, oh, no wonder why I had so many mental health issues. No wonder why I was put on ADHD medication. No wonder why I was always hurt and always struggling with recovery. Like, I knew nothing at that point, and no one around me did either. And that, because I mean, you think over 15 years ago, now close to 20 years, even the coaches that we had that gave us nutritional guidance, like, they didn't know anything about female hormones. So what we did way back then is now what we pay for as we get older. And this is like and that's like that little mic drop, because, and that's when I started searching after college. I'm like, still didn't have a cycle. I went 9 years without having a cycle. And when I did get it, it was twice a year, and I was able to pinpoint it was around July and November. July, a lot of family events, you're going out, cookouts, more food. Oh, interesting. November, Thanksgiving, other family holidays. Oh, I got my cycle again. But I was never able to see the reoccurrence over the those few years when I did get the cycle. I wasn't aware. So yeah, I don't want to bounce around too much because there's so much more to the story as I started to get older. But the biggest thing is like, as an athlete, you need to still be getting your cycle. That is a number one. As soon as that starts to like go away, you have to reevaluate on what is going on. Now, you're not bodybuilder lean. You're not on stage at 9%. So you should have a cycle. If it's not, then you need to reach out to someone in the functional health space. Not like the Western medicine, because they're going to pacify you.
It's infuriating to hear that somebody told you not to worry about the fact that you didn't have a cycle. Like, if somebody's not watching this video, my jaw did not come off the floor for like 2 minutes as you talked about it.
And it's crazy because it wasn't just one doctor. I went to another doctor and they were like, "Oh, are you sure you're not pregnant?" And I'm like, "I don't have sex with men. I'm not pregnant." And at that point, the doctor didn't know what to do. Their jaw dropped too. So I was like, just being honest.
Right. I mean, you're like, the risk is not there.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Like, they were gaslighting me so bad. They were like, "Well, we should do a blood test just to make sure." And I'm like, there is no possibility. I am an angel sent on earth if I get pregnant and don't have sex with a man.
That's wild. So even you mentioned something, you were like, athletes, like, you need to be getting your cycle. But let's even bring that down to like women.
Yes.
You need to be getting your cycle. Your cycle is literally a determinant of your health and well-being. And it is a sign of either A, things are going great, or B, we probably need to look into things a little bit deeper.
Right. And in between, when I was getting my cycle, like the few times, it was brutal. It was really bad. And then there's just so many health factors that I think back about now, and I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. Why sex was painful or whatever. Like all of that stuff is a correlation to not having your cycle. So if your cycle starts to shift, you're skipping months, it's long some months, it's short some months, that's the first sign to start paying attention and start and asking yourself, what am I feeling? What's different? What's going on? What's changed?
And even the painful cycles, I think, and I talk about this a lot because it's so normalized
Mm-hmm.
that we as women are supposed to kind of hate our cycles. It's an inconvenience. It's painful. It's miserable. We're supposed to feel like shit during that time. And so as a result, we like internalize that and we don't realize that painful, miserable cycles are actually a really good indicator that our body is missing something, whatever
Mm-hmm.
that something is. And we can dig deeper into that. But we're basically gaslit from young ages that, oh, your period's miserable, let's put you on birth control, let's just like tamp down your hormones and not think about it for the next 16 or so years until you want to come off birth control and have a kid.
I will say that is one thing that I was offered birth control, and I'm so thankful because they were like, oh, yeah, we'll regulate your hormones, you'll be I was like, no, there's no need for, but I'm so glad. I didn't know what I know now about birth control. I would have said no anyways, but I'm very thankful that I didn't have that going for me on top of everything else that I did to my body.
Right. So you had the cycle stuff already going
Mm-hmm.
on. You did not have a period, excuse me. And then I know you also had some thyroid stuff going on. So talk a little bit more about how your reds basically developed over time
Mm-hmm.
as you were going through, right? Body was still under immense amount of stress. And now we have this cascading effect happening in your body.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that went was my cycle. And then after that, it was just like one of those things, like that was a normal thing. So I kept on moving through. A lot of mental health stuff came up during that time, a lot of injuries after that, poor recovery, sleep was trash. So fueling off a lot of caffeine at that time. I was prescribed Adderall at a very high dosage a few times a day. So think caffeine, college, Adderall, tons of hours of practice, double sessions morning and night, games on the weekends, on top of just like being a teenager, figuring out their life, and all of that in between. It was wild. And it wasn't until 2015, I believe, that I finally got in touch with a functional doctor and had the proper labs done about my thyroid, because at that point I was cold all the time. My hair was super thin. My digestion was trash. I was in the doctor's office probably at least once a month. I was seeing a GI doctor because they were like, you just don't have a normal digestive tract. And I'm like, interesting. Went for some of the most embarrassing testings of my life all around GI. They never talked to me about nutrition. They never talked to me about my activity. So I'm like, another time of getting gaslit by Western medicine. And at that point, I was like, I don't know what to do. So I reached out to a mentor of mine at that time, and he was like, try to get into the functional health. This is the testing that's to get done. Go there. Ended up getting the results back and found out I had a thyroid issue. At that point, I had already seen an endocrinologist. I seen my primary. They were like, oh, no, you're fine. But I didn't know that all they tested was my TSH. They never tested anything else, not even a free T4, nothing. It was just TSH, and this was at the endo. So I'm like, okay. 5 years of a misdiagnosis of a thyroid issue. At that point, cold all the time, the weight was retaining. I was doing more output, taking in less calories. It was a perfect recipe for disaster.
But that's what's expected, right?
Yeah.
Is all of a sudden, especially for athletes, right? Athletes are so used to not having to worry about like their body composition and such, especially through our teenage, early 20 years. I mean, you mentioned, okay, like just the natural progression of being a college student, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can absolutely destroy our bodies at that age and still wake up the next morning and be like, I'm fine. And then all of a sudden things start to creep up and we oftentimes blame it on age. And age is part of it, right? We can't get away with as much as we used to. But now all of a sudden we go, okay, well, now I just need to work harder. I need to exercise more. I need to eat less. And what we don't realize is, okay, we're perpetuating this trend that's actually making things worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at that point, I mean, I remember after college, I got the full-time job. I was taking in a crazy amount of caffeine because I had absolutely no energy. So my adrenals were also shot at that point, and I didn't know anything about that. It wasn't until I was working at a one-on-one facility, private business. I had worked myself up to having a full roster. I couldn't get myself out of bed. I was training 40 hours a week for clients, felt really good. And within, I don't know, a couple months, had to cancel. I was down to 8 clients because I could not pull myself out of bed to get to work. And at that point, I was like, Alysa, you have to change something or you're going to be going complete downhill.
Yeah. So what did that look like? So at this point now, right, you start seeing a functional doctor, you start finally getting some answers. Mm-hmm. And what was some of the initial recommendations that they were making to you, or what were some of the first steps that you even took to try to correct this?
So they did right away. They put me on a nature thyroid. I also was on a T3 at that point to help things get moving. Honestly, it worked absolutely phenomenal for the first 4 months. I dropped probably about 20 pounds within that 4 months. I felt better. My hair was still pretty thin, but I had more energy. I was back at work, but I was still disconnected with my relationship with food. It was the carryover from college and the carryover from all the extremes that I have done that I didn't know how to fuel myself. And I was working with a coach at the time, and the pieces were not being put together. So we were still doing body composition type of focus. It was never like a health focus first. So this got dragged out for years, and it was just the medication game. And then I want to say probably 2021, I had hired another coach at that time, or 2020, 19, whatever it was. And I went through my first pretty much in-depth health phase, gut protocol, really diving deeper to figure out what the underlying root cause of my thyroid issue was. And at that point, I was like, what does this even mean? Because I was but again, I was in a position where I'm like, still had a poor relationship with food. So even doing all these extreme protocols, they did not work as well because I didn't understand their deeper science and, the connection with myself to give my body that time to kind of heal. So the trauma was still sitting in my body as I'm doing more extremes. And yeah, I got results. Things moved along. But looking back, would they have been better if I worked on healing my trauma relationship around food, trusting myself, and then going forward?
You bring up such an excellent point, because I remember when I got into doing gut protocols with people, I was coming out of being an intuitive eating coach. So telling people restriction is bad. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, we're going to do elimination diets, which is basically restriction. And it was such a complex thing to navigate with a lot of my clients. And a lot of the clients that I initially started working with had come to work with me initially because they needed to heal their relationship with food. But then we would uncover, oh, you also have really bad gut issues. Now I need to push you in the opposite direction from where we were going. But you bring up a great point that actually kind of resolving that foundation of getting to a place where you actually have better balance, not only does it actually kind of fix not all of your problems, but a lot of them. It starts to help you feel a little bit more balanced. It helps you feel better. It helps you start to remove a few of your symptoms, but it also sets you up to then better take on a more intensive gut protocol.
Absolutely. And if I was to go back and look at things a little bit differently from where I am now, and this is how I coach, is getting someone to rebuild their relationship with themselves, getting them to learn on how to trust their decisions with making and creating meals versus giving a meal plan, following this, and this is what you need to follow, and this is just because I said so. You know what I mean? We need to really start teaching people hey, they're not enemy foods. Certain times we have to pull them out for certain reasons, but looking back, I probably wouldn't have to spend the tens and thousands of dollars in coaching and protocols and things like that if I would have known on how to trust myself first, build the foundations really well, then incorporate what needs to, reassess, give it time, adjust along the lines of that.
And obviously you're in a way better place now. So when did you realize, oh, I need to tackle this food issue? I need to figure out how to actually find balance.
So what's wild is I've always believed in forever being a student. So I have invested in coaches since I was in high school. I had a coach all throughout that time, and it wasn't until when I signed up for FNMS, the reason why I signed up for that was because of my own stuff and my selfish reason of like, I need to figure out what the hell is going on with me because I'm seeing more of it come about of the people that I'm also coaching. So I need to better understand it, put myself through it and understand myself. That way I can explain it more to everybody else. So I did that for a while. I did that. I signed up in I think it was, Sam's going to kill me. 21 maybe, I think it was. And I was still going through other protocols, but yeah. And I honestly don't think it was until 22 that I actually hired Sarah Factor. And she was my coach. And what the difference in our coaching was is that she heard me. She sat down, she opened up the door for me to actually listen, not just look at my labs and this and that, but listen on where I was, what my history was, where my relationship with food is. And we worked on rebuilding my trust around food and honestly gaining weight. And I wasn't lean. Like I wasn't someone who was walking around at 15% body fat or, even probably like 18. But I had gained 8 pounds in the first probably 4 or 5 months. And I got my period. That was the first year that I got my period every single month. So think, I went from 2011 to 2022 without a normal cycle.
It's a long time.
That's a wild ride. Try being 27 years old and them telling you have postmenopausal hormones and everything's flatline. I had no estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, nothing. My DECH test was flat. My cortisol levels were great. Great. Awesome. That was surprising. But yeah, no hormones.
And it just goes to show you, right, like how these things cascade. And a lot of people, right, we start talking about hormones and gut health and all of that. And all of that's great because yes, we're figuring out like at the root what's really wrong and what's really keeping people from getting the results that they desire. But on the flip side, we can also see here very clearly in your story how a lot of our actions over time leads us to these cascading effects of, hormonal dysfunction, of gut health. And we have to connect it because our hormones they don't go whack for no reason most of the time, right?
Right.
There's obviously going to be certain cases, but overall, we have to take responsibility for there was something that led me up to this point.
Yeah, and most people don't. So that this is where I am also like a type A. I'm very much a perfectionist. So this also steps into taking account like being with the coach is like they need to understand who you are, how your brain functions, and how you move through your days. Because I lived so disconnected from myself and not even knowing. Because you show up as an athlete, you showed up, you functioned, you play the sport, you go to school, you do all the things, and you end up on top, right? You get, rewarded for this stuff. You get the validation that you're doing all the right things. But in the sideline, you don't realize that you're suffering. And it doesn't need to be that way. But that's what, the society kind of pushes on. Just, do more. Oh, no, suck it. Like, don't worry about that kind of, And it's really, really difficult. And I feel, and that's why I get so passionate about this stuff. Because what we do now, even at, I'm 35 now, what I do now is going to affect on what I do, how I live about the rest of my life. And I don't know about you, I was only given one of these, so I'm trying to live it to the fullest. I feel like the first half of it, I was dead and not even knowing. Even though I had so much great times. But I really had to do so many things to show up. It wasn't like an organic being able to show up. Like I had to prep myself for things.
I mean, you were spending like some of your, what's supposed to be your prime years struggling so immensely. And then obviously as athletes, we are told, show up anyway. You have to push through pain. And so we embody that. We think that we have to overcome these hard struggles without realizing, okay, what if my struggle is actually a sign that there's something deeper going on? But I want to back it up because you said something that I think is going to scare people. And that was in your initial months of coaching, you weren't necessarily lean, but you had to gain weight. And that scares the shit out of people.
Right.
So what was your mindset around that at the time? Were you prepared to gain weight?
So it wasn't, I knew naturally that going from where I was at, I don't remember my caloric intake at that point, it doesn't really matter, but I knew I was eating a significant more food. Now, yes, I had to prepare myself and mentally because I also had disorderly eating. But what I didn't realize is like I was kind of eating like a bird all day long most days. And then at night, it was binging on whatever was around. So when it came down to having to eat more and having the support, I knew and I trusted my coach that they would have my back. They got to really know me and what we did is we went very, very slowly. And at that point, it doesn't matter how slow you need to go with someone as long as you're continuous moving forward. And some days, some weeks it's moving back. But it's the continuous of that communication, being open, being honest, creating that like safety to understand like, hey, this is okay. And if if you're starting to feel uncomfortable, we'll pull back a little bit, reassess, and then continue moving forward. But when you start feeling your brain function better, your energy improving, hey, wow, I'm getting a cycle and I haven't had one consistently in over a year. And there's no protocol but eating more food. Interesting how that works out.
Crazy.
Crazy.
Who would have thought?
And I wasn't working out like, everybody thinks the athletic, you're training hard. Guys, I was training 3 to 4 days a week, walking outside and eating more food than when I was playing 3 sports in college. Wild.
Right. So training less, eating more, the complete opposite from what we're often told.
Right.
But in these situations, I think the diet culture messages get so fixated on people who who are in larger bodies, who don't move their body, who don't watch what they eat. But then there is a subset of people who are watching what they eat, who are moving their bodies, and they're taking it to another extreme. And it can be really frustrating for women on that end of the spectrum to be told, oh, you need to move less because we have this we have it ingrained in our brain, like, oh, if I do less or if I eat more, then I'm going to gain weight. And that's a bad thing. But you're showcasing how this was actually really good because it supported your hormones. At this point, your gut is probably also doing way better, I would assume, right? And now you're feeling better overall. So you're able to live your life to the fullest a little bit more than what you were doing before.
Yeah. And I mean, and it all started in 22 or whatever it may be. But the biggest thing is most people, and this is another thing, and I'm sure you coach this way too, is like, you need to get outside more. Get more movement in nature. You don't need to be in the gym all the time. You need to enjoy your life. So one of the biggest thing for athletes, I would think, and like, especially myself, was like learning how to incorporate. You don't need to be in the gym, like playing your sport or in the, the physical gym, like lifting weights in order to get results. Like get outside, get in nature, go walk more. So it wasn't taking away from like when we had to pull back on movement. It was like, hey, get outside more instead of being on the treadmill. Cool. Awesome. Training. You have an efficient training program for those 3 to 4 days. It doesn't need to be dragged out. Come on, you don't need to be in the gym 5 days a week. That's just ridiculous at this point.
But it's hard for the type A overachiever to do less.
Right. So
and to enjoy.
And it's one of those things like finding. So I think one of the things that I talk about most is like discovering hobbies. Most people don't have hobbies. Really leaning into having a hobby list and being able to tap into those things more to refill your cup in a real way.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot and I actually added it to my intake forms. What are things that you do that you love and make you happy? Because I need to know that you have things beyond exercise and beyond eating that fills your cup and brings joy to you. And then we can also tap into those things when we're talking about things like stress and, open spaces of time and things like that.
I love that. And that's one of the things that we've started doing as well is like we have clients create a list. Create a list of all the things that bring you some piece of joy. When things start to arise, go to that list. That way you don't have to think about it. It's already written down. Pick one of those. If it's not working, choose the one that's underneath it.
I swear we share the same brain sometimes.
I love it.
Because same. So at this point now, right, you're eating more, you've gained weight, you've gotten your period back. What happened next? What was the trajectory of your health journey after that towards truly healing? Because I mean, you explained right at the beginning of the podcast, this is a long process.
This is a very long process, and that's one of the things that I don't think people realize is like, because I wrecked my system so bad when I was younger, I have to choose different for myself. You cannot fall in a victim mindset of like, oh yeah, my hormones are trash. But yeah, they are. You did this to yourself. Now you have to live with it, but it doesn't need to be painful. You need to be proactive. I have to go for lab work every 4 months. I get my thyroid tested every 4 months. I go for a very intense type of lab work every 6 months. Now, does everyone need to do that? No, but I'm trying to live my best life. And I like to stay on top of things. And yes, there's certain supplements. I'm on hormone replacement. I've been on hormone replacement for a while now. But that's because I did everything I could. I went through the protocols. I did everything I could to get things naturally. And unfortunately, they just didn't want to work. So I had to get on testosterone. My level was a 9. Even after all the protocols I went through, all the supplement supports to help with natural testosterone, production, nothing. But guess what? I figured out the dosage. I know exactly what it is. I can even titrate down now than compared to where I was last year. So my hormones are improving, and now I'm able to take less.
But also key piece is that you tried a lot of the other things first.
Like I did everything else first. Yeah, I went for all the testing. I went for different protocols. I tried different approaches with, coaching and training and pulling back and pushing forward. Went for other markers, and the only thing that I was able to do is I had to go on hormone replacement. It's not the end of the world. It's a very, very small dosage that I have to do. And actually, like I said, last time I went for my labs, I was like, wow, I don't have to take as much anymore. Because it wasn't until I want to say last year until I fully felt the best I ever have in my life.
And that says a lot.
It's a lot. I mean, I look at it, sit back and look at my journey, and I'm like, shit, I struggled throughout college, which I didn't know, all after college with all the doctor's appointments and living there and being gaslit and having so much trauma stored in my body from what people told me. And I did fall in that victim mindset. But that's why I coach the way that I do now. Because so many people suffer in silence and think they need to heal in silence when that's not the reality. We need to be able to communicate. We need to be able to know what we're feeling and being able to express, but also trust ourselves that hey, your body's not broken. It needs some fine tuning and support to get you where you want.
Totally. And even if you don't get it all the way right, that's not to say that all of the things that you did up until that point were a failure. That got you to where you are now.
Absolutely.
And I think also what's hard for you particularly is you went through this at a time when a lot of these conversations were just building. So you had to do so much trial and error and personal advocacy, and you spent so much time being told by doctor after doctor that this isn't an issue, or let's just run your TSH and that's it. And you literally clamored your way through this. Mm-hmm. But now there's way more direct paths for a lot of people that are coming after us because we've learned this information. We're coaching people about it. The conversations have grown around it, whether we think it's a detriment or not, right? Because it's a very convoluted conversation, but at least we know that there are people in this space who are finally acknowledging hey, we do need to actually optimize our hormones, our gut health. And this is how we do it. And this is how we do it through lifestyle factors, nutrition, training, sleep, stress, not just throwing, what I loved about your Instagram story today, a $1,700 PDF packet and supplements. That's not necessary.
Sit back and look at it. I know you do this too. Is even with people who have the most extreme cases that we've seen with gut issues or hormone issues, what are you working on the most? The foundations, the basics, because no one takes the time to understand on how to fuel their body, how to be, take a little bit of time to hey, what am I feeling? How do I feel after I eat a meal? Everybody's just moving through the day on freaking fast forward and missing the journey and just wants to get to a destination. And then you get to the destination and you don't even enjoy it because it's a view instead of the whole freaking journey along the way.
Beautiful analogy. I liked that. But it's so true of the type A person too, because we are very metric focused and we are very goal oriented. So there's an end goal in mind and we just want to achieve that. And we just need to push to get there, and stopping to actually embrace our feelings is Oh, that's too woo.
Wait, I want to go real woo on you quick.
Not even woo though. Like, I don't consider myself to be woo. I maybe like dabble, dip my toes, whatever. But I agree with you is that we become so disconnected from what we're feeling, how we're connecting to food and all of that. And then we sit there and go, well, I've done diet after diet and it's not working. And we wonder why. Well, because we're constantly outsourcing what's supposed to be more natural.
I know, it's wild. And I think one of the biggest reasons why I've had so much success, especially in the last year, is I finally learned on how to surrender. And this is where the woo gets in, and people people think you need to sit on a rock in the middle of the forest and freaking stare at the trees. And it's like, no, every day looking at it, like where there's resistance, what's going on? Are you the reason for the resistance? And being able to surrender into like, oh, hey, that meal wasn't that, my stomach was whacked. I need to actually lean in and be like, all right, now I need to make a little bit of an adjustment. Surrender into listening to yourself and your intuition, because that's where we come from. And we lose our connection with our intuition and our gut along the way because of everything that we go through and all the voices that, oh, you should be doing this, or this is the best thing, or whatever. And then we don't even know how to trust ourselves on how to do anything.
Does it really sound that woo at the end of the day? I mean, like, all we're simply saying is like, listen to your body.
Yeah, wow. People call that woo.
People do call that woo.
Yeah.
Because it's not an equation. It's not calories in, calories out. It's not
a protocol.
This many. Yeah. So looking back now, if you had the opportunity to go back and speak to your younger self, what would you say to her?
Oof, gosh, I've had a lot of conversations with myself all the time. Looking back,
we're doing a lot of inside work.
A lot of inside work. Looking back at my younger self is believing in myself. Honestly, it's, hey, you got this. Believe in you don't need any external validation. You got this. You know how to move through your day. And if I look back at myself then, is really understanding on what my personal goal was for whatever I was trying to achieve, not based on what someone else's goal was.
I like that. I like that a lot. And that's a hard conversation to have with ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, because I grew up and, everybody around me I was the first one. I mean, it's the only one who plays sports in my family and go to college and things like that. But I was always comparing myself to the people that were even way above me. Same thing in the functional space. It's like sometimes we can get, caught up in like comparing out to like our mentors, and it's like, that's not our population. Stop comparing. And then we get so confused and overwhelmed, and like, so it's a forever learning process about yourself, and understand like you gotta evolve with yourself as you go along.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to grow. We have to change. I mean, what got us into one particular position cannot continue to be our future if we expect a different outcome. Mm-hmm. And so we as people have to change through this process too. We have to, as you mentioned, we have to, embrace training less. And what does that do for an athlete's brain? We have to realize what phase of life we're in, how we can take care of our bodies better, what our ultimate goal is. Like, we are not training for, let's say, athletics in the same sense that we were before. And that changes who we are. It changes how we walk through life. It changes how we make decisions. And that's scary for a lot of people, but it's necessary.
I would say too, is like anyone coming out of like college sports or even, anything else, is like, make sure you have an identity outside of just being an athlete. You're always an athlete at your heart, but the identity of like what your identity is in college, athlete versus afterlife athlete, or however you want to look at it, is very different. And what is sustainable now that, hey, now you have a full-time job, you have a family, dogs, kids, whatever it may be. What you did in college or high school is not the same. You can't do the same stuff. Doesn't mean you can't be a badass and do anything you want, but it's the fact that you have to take different approaches and understand that, hey, this is part of the process.
Yeah, being a badass just looks a little different.
Sure does.
So one of the things with athletics and with, I would even say, people in this day and age is appreciation for recovery. And not just necessarily recovery in a sense of, how you've recovered with your hormones and gut health, but recovery even more on a day-to-day. Anytime I talk about how do you recover from exercise and training, and how do we make sure that we balance our nervous system and all those things, a lot of people kind of look at me and go, I don't know. So what does that look like for you now in this phase of life? You've gone through your healing journey. You're feeling better than ever. You now want to maintain your health, and not even just maintain, you're looking to optimize. You're like, I want to feel like my best ever self, but you're still training athletically. I've
Oh
seen
yeah.
your workouts and know that you're working with a coach still. What does your recovery look like?
So honestly, I love my aura ring. I do love the data. I've been using it for probably 4 years now. It definitely helps me because I'm also love numbers and seeing things. But honestly, I go off how I feel too. Like if I wake up in the morning and I'm sluggish, I'm wondering, hey, did I eat something a little late last night? What was my training like? Should I push today? So I am asking my questions to myself, but I'm also using data like my HRV, seeing what my heart rate is like. Honestly, I do see where I am in my cycle. Doesn't mean that I stop training in my luteal phase, but I'm like, oh, my back might be a little bit more tender. I need to warm up a little bit different. So I'm using all of these tools to help bring awareness to how I approach my training, approach my nutrition, and also sleep is my foundation. I prioritize my relationship around sleep. Like my friends know, you got to leave by 8. I'm going to bed at 9.
That's so funny. I literally have plans with friends coming up in the next few weeks. They're coming over. And I was like, you're coming over on a Sunday, which, first of all, this is my sacred day because I don't like to do anything social on Sundays, but it's the only day we can nail down. And I was like, you got to be out of my house by 8. I don't care what you do, but you got to leave by 8 because I got to be in bed by 8:30 because I got to be asleep by 9. Like nobody's messing with my sleep schedule.
It's so funny. My best friend bought me a magnet for the house, and it literally says you have to leave by 9 because they like people know me. And like if you want to go out, like we went out for a friend's birthday on Saturday, and we stayed out till 1:30 in the morning. I was wrecked the next day, and I don't drink, so that wasn't the reason. I was a tired hangover. I have to mentally prepare for those because I know my body just doesn't like it. Like I don't feel great. So everybody who doesn't sleep and pushes through, like sleep when you're dead, like you're killing yourself very slow along the way.
Say it louder for people in the back. Like we
I
have to
did it.
appreciate sleep.
I did it. I used to work, go to school, all that stuff, and I would, 3-4 hours of sleep, and I'm like, I'm good. I'll have another bang. It's fine.
Yeah. It like we don't realize how much sleep is tied to our health. And then we're, it's again that go, go, go mentality, the push through, the, well, I've got kids and I've got a job. And like, look, I understand we all have our shit, but to some degree, we have to realize that like sleep is the ultimate recovery tool. And if we expect our hormones to be in check, if we expect our gut to be happy, like we have to prioritize the top recovery tool that our body has.
And it's the one that's in our control. Like, yeah, it doesn't mean that you need to sleep 8 hours every night, but you need to prioritize your sleep time, like however you want to look at it, your sleep hygiene, like it's another little job. Because it's going to it's going to keep you running and fueling and showing up better for your family, for your work, for yourself, and everything else around you.
Preach. And maybe not even like a little job, but like a ritual.
Yeah.
I like to like create.
I love my nighttime routine, and it's nothing fancy.
What is your bedtime routine?
So we have dinner, we kind of relax, we'll talk. Sometimes we play games. Sometimes we'll watch like an episode of something, but the TV's off by 8:30. I take a shower. That's my nighttime routine. I love a nighttime shower. I guess it's my brain just wanders off. We walk the dogs before we shower, and then get just starting to wind down for bed. We probably laugh a little, play, say stupid jokes, and then just kind of go to bed. So it's nothing wild at all.
Yeah. No, it doesn't have to be wild at all. Ours is usually we eat dinner, we go for our final cul-de-sac walk together, and that's when Sean and I like to do our when I like to and Sean plays along, we do my 3 questions: daily gratitude, what is one thing you did today that made you happy, and what is one thing you did well today. So we'll do our little chat around the block, and then I'm in bed by 8:30 and I'm reading my book. And then 9, it's lights out, and I put my eye mask on. Sean is usually not sleeping at that point, but my eye mask goes on, and I am done with the day. It doesn't have to be anything exciting, and it doesn't have to be the same thing every day. I always tell people that because if you pinpoint yourself into one set routine, sometimes people get a little resistant to that. It's like, I like how you have variety. You're like, sometimes it's a game, sometimes we talk, sometimes it's a TV show. It's like, have a few things to choose from.
Yeah, and I think that's another good point you make is like if people get stuck on one routine and like, oh, this is how I get what happens if you're not able to do that routine? Then you're not sleeping? So people get so rigid with certain things that you have to learn on how to flow. Like if it's not this, then maybe it's that. Have a backup plan so that you can fall into something else.
Absolutely. So create that bedtime routine, embrace your sleep, the ultimate recovery tool. As we're wrapping up this podcast, if there's anything that you want the audience to take away from this episode, what would it be?
Very deep. Honestly, start listening to yourself. And especially for females, like we coach mostly all women. We may have a couple men, but majority women. And it's going to be corny to say, but like your cycle is another vital sign. Pay attention to that. If things start to shift, or if you're on, like people are on birth control, notice how you're feeling. That is my biggest thing. Bring awareness to how you're feeling and start learning how to trust yourself. If you see things and you're questioning things, ask someone. Don't wait until it's too late. You don't need another extreme. You don't need another protocol. You don't need to learn on what sustainability can look like and I hate to say the word comfortable, but get comfortable understanding like, hey, sustainability is what the recipe for longevity, what you can sustain, what you can show up, how you can recover. That is really the foundation on where you need to spend the majority of your year. And then you can have a couple fun times of pushing a little bit harder, or if you wanted to diet down, but don't live in that state all year round.
Love that. That is a perfect finish to the episode. So thank you so much for coming on. I think this was so insightful. I think there's going to be a lot of people who relate to a story like yours, but they're just at that beginning phase, and this gives them a lot of hope going forward.
Absolutely. And I'm here to talk about it all. There's so much to my story that wasn't here that I think about later on. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to send it my way. I'm like a blabmouth. I'll talk about the story for days.
We love it. We love it. Well, thank you. And this was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Anti-Macro Podcast. I hope you found today's insights valuable and actionable for your own wellness journey. Remember, true transformation comes from consistent, intentional steps forward. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated on all things health and fitness, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a new episode. I release fresh content bi-weekly every Wednesday to keep you inspired and informed. And hey, if you loved what you heard, I'd be thrilled if you could take a moment to share this podcast with a friend or family member who might benefit from it. By sharing it with others, you're helping them on their wellness journey too. Keep striving for progress, not perfection, and I'll catch you next time.